Hey, everybody. I'm Lisa, and this is the Quantum Mystic Podcast. And I'm here with my beautiful friend, Jane. And today we're talking about, I think a problem that a lot of us have, like we can grow up in situations where we feel like we're either too much or not enough. And as we go through the trickiness of our childhood, sometimes we have to sort of split off parts of ourselves or exile parts of ourselves that we really need. There are parts of who we are at a deep level of our being, but they're maybe not acceptable in our family. Like maybe you were told that you were too loud, too sensitive, too needy, too powerful, too bright and shiny, whatever it was that sort of wasn't acceptable in your family of origin when you were a little one gets kind of, disconnected. We kind of have to put it away. So that we can just be loved and accepted by our family. So we exile those parts. And in this episode, we're going to talk about, sort of like I think about this as heading down to the basement with a flashlight to find those exiled parts, those tender parts of us that get shoved into the shadow. And a lot of times when we do shadow work, um, what we're doing is reclaiming these parts of ourselves that got exiled. Or if you've ever done IFS, internal family systems, you've learned to work with the parts of us. We can think about them as archetypes or parts. And I think a lot of times the healing work we do in our healing journey is to find those exiled parts. Also, sometimes when we have, not sometimes, really all the time, when we have trauma, trauma is like a fragmenting experience that can further exile these different parts of us. Maybe it's the part that holds aliveness, our creativity, our intuition, our joy, our desire, our power, our fire, our spark. Maybe it's your sensitivity or your psychic ability. But we want to talk today about how these parts get banished and what do we need to do to reclaim them. So if you've ever felt, and I think a lot of times this comes down into the sort of too much, not enough polarity. So if you've ever found yourself in that situation, pull up a chair, sit down, grab a cup of tea, join us in this conversation because we are here to start the reclaiming process. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. There's already some folks saying hello, and we love it when you guys are listening live. Let us know that you're here, and you can always say where you're listening from. Just say hi, join the conversation. Let us know if this is resonating with you or if you've had experience with the topics that we're talking about. So hello to Rich. Good morning. Soul Plasma, Wendy. I think I'm supposed to hear this today. Glad you're here. So perfect timing. And yeah, for those, I think the topic itself, the exiled self, that word comes from the internal family system, IFS, like Lisa was saying, which was just to give props, developed by Richard Schwartz. And it's a really great framework for doing this shadow work that we talk about on this podcast so often. And I feel like it's important to say, like, we're not talking about self-esteem necessarily. We're talking about like the actual architecture, the actual internal structure that forms when a child's like full expression gets met with either withdrawal or correction or punishment. And when actually what the child wants to be met with is love and acceptance. So we're talking really about like the mechanistic structure of how we get built from childhood into adulthood. So it's pretty fascinating, like the exile is the young parts that are carrying that original pain and shame from some sort of attachment rupture.
Yeah.
And then it holds like this emotional charge that we carry with us until we look at it. And so it's pretty fascinating because, of course, we talk a lot about the nervous system here. And this is the exiled self is really a nervous system level response.
Yeah, totally. Let's say hi to Joan from Pittsfield. Hi, Joan. And Jody Bees is here. And Rich is saying, he got the message that I got to stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. You got something to cry. I'm going to give you something to cry about. Like so many, I
So
think,
tough.
so men got that. Little boys and little girls do. And when I was studying to be a therapist, I studied psychosynthesis, which is sort of the precursor to internal family systems, or something that internal family systems was sprang from. And in psychosynthesis, they talk about parts. So subpersonalities, is sort of what they call them in psychosynthesis. In IFS, it's more about parts. But these subpersonalities, which are often seen as archetypes, so there's a big connection between the psychosynthesis model that I studied and the Jungian therapy models that I studied, to see that, really none of us gets through childhood. I mean, maybe there's some like excellent parents out there in this day and age that allow like their children to develop into full selves, but certainly as a Gen Xer, I didn't get that. There was pretty strict set of conditions, right? Everybody's family has a set of conditions that's often unspoken. It's not like these rules are posted on the fridge, right? It's the unspoken rules of engagement of who you have to be in order to be loved and accepted by your family. And as Rich was saying, maybe it's about like you can't have emotions, or you can't be more powerful, more energetic, more or more sensitive. There was something about you that your parents couldn't deal with, or your family system couldn't deal with. It has nothing to do with your actual value at all. It's only your parents' capacity. And I mean, I think about my parents, who did the best they could with what they had. They were so under-resourced. They were so stressed and, in pain and unconscious, that they just had such a limited capacity to raise children. And I think that's what we do. And my theory on this is that's in a way why we come here. Like we come here to experience that kind of compression and limitation that gives us friction for our evolvement. If you want to evolve, you have to have sort of friction to rub against to grow, in order to really grow. At least that's how I choose to make sense of my childhood anyway.
I 100% agree. I was actually just talking to our year one students, folks yesterday about that, and how like we need friction. We do need like almost these boundaries that kind of push us, because if we don't have them, which I sort of won the jackpot in terms of I didn't have like big trauma in my life when growing up. And what I noticed that in hindsight and reflection of my life, I created a lot of friction for myself to learn about myself, right? But I do think that even with like the best parents on the planet, there's going to be some dissonance because of personality, because of like whoever the kids are and the parents are. There's going to be something that is going to create even just like a little bit of friction for each other's growth. It goes both ways, I think. But yeah, I totally agree with that. And what we're doing, this is all like this polyvagal response. The body starts really to manage safety by managing how we express ourselves in the world. And we like children learn that super early. And again, because it's like, how do we receive love? How is that attachment created with our parents? And so, it's like, are we too much? Or like we said, or do we not feel like we're enough? And they're kind of like the same coin, two sides of the same coin, I feel like.
A lot of people have both, which really sucks. It's like when you simultaneously feel like you're too much and not enough, you
Yeah.
know? And that sort of lands in the solar plexus chakra is shame, which shame is really like a really deep rejection of who we are, or when we have been shamed.
Yeah.
And certainly in my generation, shame was the parenting style of choice. And also in the educational system too, because that, you might have had sort of easy with your family, but had a lot of peer wounding. Like you go to school and you get
Yeah.
bullied, or, there's also wounds that come from our peers. And shaming was how corrections were made, and when I was growing up in school and with parents, and
Totally.
that is part of what creates that rejection of the self, the fragmentation. Like it's different. Like it's not like, oh, your behavior is bad, right? It's you are bad. You who you are intrinsically is bad. And when we get that message strong enough and early enough, we're like, oh, that's bad. That part of me that's and you know I think about how children are kind of like need want machines, like they're sort of raw need want. So we're told we're too greedy, or we're too selfish, or don't have that second piece of pie, or don't, save room for others, or whatever. What message we get that is laden with shame goes in the basement. And John Bradshaw talked about this in his book about shame, called the Healing the Shame That Binds You, which is a fantastic book about shame and shadow work. Is that we have to go. He sort of started talking about the basement as the shadow, like where we put these exiled parts, and a lot of times we have to go through a pretty powerful de-shaming process, or an accepting process, to accept maybe there is a part of you that's really needy, or really greedy, or wants everything, or is full of desire, or whatever it is that you had to push away, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and we talk about how everything is really information, and to just treat life like a research paper, and have
Yeah.
curiosity around it. And when we can have that curiosity, it kind of loosens the grips so that we can do this work. And it's really, I feel like it's important to understand that we're, as adults, like we've been managing our system, this like the architect, the framework of our system really well. And so, that's the response that might look like, oh, I don't know, like the not enoughness it looks really functional. There's like achievement and was like easy to be around, there's all
Mhm.
these things that come from that. But on the inside, internally, there's a lot of constriction as opposed to expansion, which is what we're kind of going towards. And I feel like paradoxically, like the gift that you're talking about, like the gift that um, is within each of us of what the expression is the same as is sort of that exiled quality. and and it just kind of went that part of ourselves just kind of got larger and louder. um and it's really, I don't know, I feel like that intensity um is of whatever the exiled part is. It's like becomes the creative force, it becomes the passion, it becomes
Mhm.
the 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 gift. And I feel like there's a split between the two, but really what we're looking to do is bring them back together and to like
100% integrate
welcome it
them.
home.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that. And I think you're right, because I also learned archetypes, and when we're doing archetype work, because I see these parts often as archetypes. And when we're doing archetype work, there's always this shadow and light side of the archetype, right? So to own that archetype, and maybe let's say we're talking about the inner child, um, there's the shadow side that holds all the unprocessed wounds, which we have to heal through. But the light side of that archetype is like the most joyful, spontaneous, intuitive. We say if you want to have any fun in your life at all, you better do some inner child work, because it's the part of you that knows how to have fun. and play. And, and even the inner critic has a shadow and light side. We know about the shadow side of the critic, but the light side of the critic is a part of you that's just about discernment and knowing how to set boundaries and knowing it's like the best bullshit detector on the planet. It's got like enough backbone to set a boundary for you. And it is that acceptance and integration of the shadow and the light. We don't when we do inner child work, and I've had people tell me like, well, I just want to chop that part of me off permanently.
Right.
And I'm like, that's not how this works. Like, we don't get to do like a selfectomy, like that, where we're just gonna like amputate part of ourselves we can't accept. That's not what we're here for.
No.
And it's more dropping into like acceptance, loving curiosity, as you said, loving kindness, compassion for the parts to heal the wounded side of these parts so we can claim the power, because there's power and gifts in every single one of these aspects of ourselves that we reject.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that gift. And so really understanding, like, if we were to chop off that part of ourselves, we wouldn't be the like unique expression of who we are.
Yeah.
And so having, like you said, that awareness and the acceptance of like those icky, sticky, like, okay, this is how I've been operating for most of my life. This is who I have been in sort of a response, in a trauma response, really, ultimately.
Yes, that's what it is.
And that's like the
Yeah.
cost of the exiled part, right?
Mhm.
Because there's like a life that's built entirely on management of these parts. And so we're really running our whole lives are running on like a fraction of its own uniqueness and aliveness. And so when we integrate those parts of ourself and we welcome them, I was like, imagine arms kind of like going around all of these parts and like bringing them in and giving them love. And it really, like, it just lessens the pain and the ickiness and the yuckiness completely. And there's like this beautiful, I don't know, alchemical process that happens. Um, and Joan says, probably be left with phantom pain. Lisa, do you know what that means?
I'm not sure what you mean
Okay.
by that, John, but I'm gonna say maybe it means that, when we do this work, we're stuck in the habit, because we're stuck in the habits of our old pain cycles, and I think that's true, and I loved what you said, Jane, because I feel like we cultivate these, adaptive strategies, these survival patterns that are based on our nervous system, how our nervous system regulates, when we're really, really little. And so that might be, we talk about freeze, fight, fawn, flight. And they're all connected to particular, um, you know, survival strategies. And we think like people pleasing, that's sort of one of mine. We think
Yeah.
that that's who we are.
Yeah.
We think that's like an actual part of our personality. And maybe it is, but I think there's so much when we let go of those survival strategies and we feel comfortable being who we are, we're sort of living from our soul's essence, from our higher self, from
Yeah.
this like the divine blueprint of who we really are. And not just the sort of acceptable survival patterns like perfectionism or people pleasing or lone wolfing or all the things that we, um, that all the things that we do. Okay, now I understand what Joan is saying. Yeah, like an
Yeah.
amputation. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So when we have an amputation, we're still gonna feel the pain. That's
Yeah.
it. When if we try to amputate a part of us, we're still gonna feel the pain 100%, Joan. That was really cool. You
Yeah,
said that.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not gonna go away, and there will
Yeah.
almost be, like, the part of your, again, that aliveness, that unique expression that would be missing, and then
Mhm.
it's like, "Well, what are we even doing here?" Because
Right.
the pain leads to the purpose, and the purpose gets us closer to, our soul's mission, really.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joan.
Yeah, that was cool. Thanks, Joan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, that's the work is about welcoming, all of these parts home. And so, it's not like we don't need to relive the wound over and over again. I think that's an old model that I don't personally believe in.
Mm,
But it's really just about updating. It's like updating the nervous system. And because the nervous system learned this pattern again for a good reason, for safety, for learning how to receive love. But it doesn't need to be fought. It just needs new information. And so there's different ways to do this. A lot of these we repeat, but I love the one, especially with IFS, like direct, and this is inner child work, but like speaking to the part rather than as the part. Like I see you, I'm not going
mhm.
anywhere. So it's like that reparenting of the
Yeah.
self, and that compassion um, really like softens the whole like fight or flight or freeze response. So
Yeah.
that's one that I love. And body based locating, like where do I feel this pain, I guess, or like the exiled presence right now, and just naming like the physical location to kind of turns that abstractness, and of that wound into something that feels workable. I don't know, those are 2 that I really like.
I like one that I learned from system-centered therapy, which is a super cool modality. Again, sort of learning to look at the self as a system,
Yeah.
and sort of naming the impulse to want to do something. And again, when we do that, it cultivates the compassionate observer of the self, right? So I'm like, oh, I have an impulse to totally like fly off into a rage and yell at that person right now, or I have an impulse to withdraw, or I'm noticing an impulse to blah blah blah, whatever it is. And I'm gonna choose not to do that right now. That so I'm having an impulse to be super judgmental, like because those things never stop. Like the humany, sort of the mucky, edgy humany part of us doesn't the shadowy side of the ego doesn't ever go away. It's just, can we see it? Can you have I'm having an impulse to pull over my car and punch that other driver in the face, um, which actually happened to me the other day. I was like, wow, check out my impulse to like go absolutely bananas on that person. And because I have a couple of black belts, I probably could really do it. So I'm like, I'm like, and I live in New England, and that's like aggressive driving is like just this, a hobby, like a side hobby we all have. Um, but I'm like, check out that impulse to want to, and
Yeah.
that I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do that. But that kind of language cultivates meditation, also does this journaling, the parts, helps us notice, honor, be like, oh yeah, I can, oh, look at you that just wants to get all, batshit crazy on that person right now. Like, yeah, that's so cute, but we're not going to do that today. That that's how I've done it. And then, really traditional shadow work too. So we do that in the school. We do that in the quantum mystic school of consciousness. In our second year, we spend an entire year together doing shadow work. And it's a life-changing gig that
Yeah.
will change everything for you, because when we do that, we bring those exiled parts home, and we no longer, because we didn't really see this yet, but those exiled parts rule your life from your subconscious until you do this work. They're sitting in the back of the bus, and they hijack the bus, and then they drive the bus, and then we actually do get out of our car and punch somebody in the face or whatever, like that. So much of the chaos and mayhem we create in our own lives comes from acting the shadow parts out.
Yeah.
So super life-changing to do shadow work.
Super life-changing. And, I think, on this path of, like, self-awareness and doing this work, often there can be things that, like, move out and integrate really easily, and then others that are kind of feel like, "Oh my god, it's still here. Oh my it's still here." Like, and like you were
Mhm.
saying, there's certain things that just feel like there's so many layers to them, and I think there's different reasons for that. Often it's like we're doing lineage healing.
Yeah.
So it's, that's also a pattern that, maybe mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers and all of this stuff that happened quite a long time ago, but is overlaid and inlaid into our blueprint. So we're doing the work as well. Obviously, it could also be karmic healing. So again, having
Mhm.
big doses of compassion with ourselves and understanding that, you know, welcoming all of these parts of ourselves home isn't like a one-time
Yeah.
reveal. It's not like it's a repeated act
Like it's
of
lifelong,
it's
right?
lifelong of proving safety, to that part of ourselves, even if it's completely on an energetic level, because it may not have even happened in this lifetime, but there's something there, right?
Yeah.
That's still kind of bracing, and there's like an old response. So just understanding, like, if we've I because so often I feel like, Lisa, you and I both heal or hear like, "Oh, I've already done the work on that," you know? Like,
Yep.
it's done.
I
And
fixed all of my issues with my mother. I worked through all my mother's stuff long, long,
yeah.
long ago, and I'm like, "Oh, honey,
And so we're
I
like,
know.
"Well, great, and, there's
What's the
probably
next
just
layer?"
another layer that's awaiting."
Yeah.
And that's not like we're not casting a spell saying, like, this is gonna happen. It's just like it's sort of it's how it's created. It's like the framework of being human. And it's not really up to us, this is just what we signed up for. And so having just really patience with ourselves, um, and
I
understanding.
mean, let's face it, we're not in our enlightenment lifetimes. I'm not anyway, and I
We're
think a
here
lot
to
of
do the
times
work.
we're like, "Oh, I wish I was done on planet Earth, and this must be my like, I've done all my work. This is my last lifetime here," and I've, like, heard so many people say that and never actually thought it was true, like, maybe there are a few people I've met who I actually think are enlightened and might not have to come back here, but they're not talking about it. They're just they're just kinda quietly living the lives of the bodhisattvas, but I get it that it comes from that I'm tired of working or I'm weary from the difficulty of being human,
Right.
which, I mean, for sure, that's fair, you know? But that idea that you're not done until and even when you're off the planet, I mean, Jane and I know this from studying with our spiritual teacher,
Yeah.
even when you're off the planet, you're still evolving, you're still working, the ascended masters are still growing, the angels are still evolving.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of this hubris, I think, and or maybe wishful thinking in that, my work here is done, like, it's never done. I don't think ever, even when we're off planet.
Yeah. Yep. And that's service to ourselves and service to humanity and service to the universe and service to God. So there's like a really deep meaning to the work that we're doing. I
Yeah,
truly, truly believe that with every cell in my body, that like there's so much reason, and we're like gifted this opportunity to do this work, and it's
yeah,
big work. Like, we're changing the structure of the universe because of the inner work that we're doing on ourselves.
totally.
And so, who are we? Who are we just to like we get to show up and be humbly in service to ourselves and the universe. Like, oh, thank you. That's how I feel about it.
Same. It's an honor. I mean, it is tiring and hard and difficult and mucky for sure, but it
Absolutely.
is it is an honor to be on the planet and have an opportunity to actually progress and move things along. So
Yeah.
Jody, my fellow New Englander, she said someone shared their feelings about my driving yesterday with a nice finger in the window, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, she really is upset." And then she says that her part that used to wanna return the favor wasn't even triggered. Well, thank you for sharing that, Jody, and congratulations for graduating from New England Driving School and into the part where you're not triggered by that anymore. That's amazing.
Yeah. Not living in New England myself. I mean, I lived in New York for a while, but I never picked that up. And it like I laugh
until you
every
drove with
time
me. Until you drove with me.
until I drive with Lisa, and she is just like I'm like every time I'm like, "Lisa, you can't say that."
Like, "What? What did I say?"
Yeah, I was like, "What do you mean? What did I say?" It's just how we drive here.
You
Ah,
can't get anywhere if you don't drive like that.
ay, ay, ay. Yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna burn down some of that karma, I think, I don't know. I'm, like, racking up some karmic brownie points by being a New England driver.
I'm sure there's something to it.
Please forgive me.
Oh, well, if this conversation, if you like this stuff, we talked about the school, the quantum-mystic.com. You can go check it out, um, and see what we're all about and get on the wait list for next spring. But we love this work so much, and that's why we're here always talking about it. And it's this at least with this topic and kind of every topic, it's really about welcoming ourselves home. And you
Mm.
know, we're it's an honor. It's an honor to be here with you, Lisa, always. And thank you, everybody, for joining us live. And if you aren't joining us live, please, as Lisa says, do the likey and subscribey thing. We love that because there's all sorts of reasons um, why the algorithm likes that, and so we like it. And leave us some comments. Let us know. You can share with friends, but also let us know like what you like and why you're here, because that's fun too. Join the conversation. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.